Are you ready for history? Yeah. Woo. It's a good crowd. We welcome you to the Charles Redd Center for Western Studies lecture. Our guest today is Yukio Shimomura, who has a wonderful and crazy story to tell us. We will have an opening prayer from Morgan Nelson, a history major from South Jordan, and then one of Yukio's high school colleagues and friends, Thomas Alexander, the emeritus director of the Charles Redd Center, will give the introduction, and we'll hear from our speaker. So, Morgan, if you'll come up here.
It's a distinct honor to introduce my friend, Yukio Shimomura. Yukio was one of 110,000 Americans of Japanese ancestry who spent most of World War II in an internment camp. Yukio and his family stayed at the Topaz camp here in Utah near the town of Delta. Yukio was born in San Francisco. He was in elementary school when World War II began. He was incarcerated first in horse stables at Tanforan Racetrack in San Bernardino, then sent to the Topaz Relocation Center. After Yukio left the center, he moved to Ogden, where his father was employed. Yukio and I graduated from Ogden High School the same year, and I've kept in contact with him since that time. Yukio worked for Hewlett-Packard as an engineer, and then worked in human resources there and for several other companies. He currently resides in Morgan Hill, California, and during the past few years, he's given presentations like this one. This tells us something of what my colleague and mentor Leonard Arrington called the price of prejudice. It's something that all of us hope will never happen again. I give you now Yukio Shimomura.
Wow, what a good-looking group of people here. Let me see. Am I on? Can you hear me in the back? Okay. Today is a special day, and it's special because I'm on the green side, and I haven't been buried yet, and I'm 87 years old. I'm going to be 88 end of this week, and so I'm really happy that I'm able to do what I'm doing right now, and so I'm just letting you know I'm coming here with joy in my heart, and I just want to say thank you. The hand clasping for me is letting you know I wish I could shake everybody's hand. The bow is to acknowledge we are together. Namaste. Okay? So today, I want to do a little bit of a history situation, but it's going to be a little bit different. And the reason why I say that is I want you to feel what I felt. I want you to be able to experience what I experienced. I want you to be able to smell what I smelled. And so this is why it's so important. So the way I'm going to do it is this. I'm going to ask all of you to now be Japanese. How many history teachers have asked you to be Japanese, right? Jay?
Not many.
Okay. So the reason why I do this is in order for, when you get a history book, it's about that thick, and the history professor gives you about 300, 400 pages to read. He gets the essence out of it. If you miss the essence out of it, you're in trouble. And so when you take the test and the quiz, if you blew it because you didn't get into the same thinking process as the professor. Well, this is going to be a different session whatsoever. So what I'm saying to you is, if you can, I don't know how flexible you are, if you can, just say, okay, I'm Japanese now, and my magic wand will say, you are all Japanese. Okay. So, and those of you who choose not to, you get to observe what Japanese people went through. And so this is going to be the interesting part of this whole experience, is that we went through some interesting experiences, and the most important part of what I'm presenting today is the ironies of what happened during a war. And in every war, there's ironies. But this one is special because I was part of it, and I just want you to know what my family and I experienced. I'm dedicating this program to my mom and dad who went through this. And they went through it in a special way that I still can't understand, which is they didn't complain outwardly. They just went along with the flow. So today, when I go through this program, I want to see if you could keep up with the flow. I want to see what you would do if you were put into that predicament. And I want you to be able to, And when you get through with this program, or when you get through with me, I want you to be able to say, geez, I didn't know that. Or, what would I do if I were in the same situation as Yukio has gone through, or the 110,000 Japanese people that went through? So this is an opportunity to experience a history class a little bit different, and I hope it works, because I've given it a little bit of thought, because I used to just give this lecture, and it used to be just factual. But now I'm starting to realize, in order to get you involved with it, I need you to be with me as we go through this whole situation. Okay. Now, that's my mom and dad right there on the upper left, my oldest brother, my next brother, and myself, my uncles and aunt, and my grandmother. My uncle and aunt were the ones that sponsored our family to come to the United States. The three women in the back are sisters, and they are the daughters of the woman here, my auntie. I'm the only one left. Okay, this picture is a little old, but I'm the only one left. Now, who's here today? Let's go through this real quick. I'll make it a little bit different. How many of you are seniors? Okay, I got a story for you. Okay. Juniors, sophomore, freshman. Is that still a legal word, freshman? Okay. We have some older folks in the room. How many of you were in the service? Thank you for your service. Okay. And how many of you know whether you have Gold Star parents or not? Gold Star grandparents? Tell them I appreciate what they went through. Okay. One other question is, how many of you were born in the United States? Wow, majority. Okay, Utah. Okay, Millard County. Oh, right. Delta? All right, we got a guy here. That's good. And it looks like I'm the oldest guy in the room except for, how old are you?
How old are you, Tom?
87.
87.
87? Okay, well, we're together here. Whoever heard of it? Executive Order 9066. Okay, lecture's over, you can go home. Incarceration versus relocation. How many of you have heard of Tan Foran? Few. Okay, that's good. Delta. How many of you been to Delta? Wow. How many of you been to Tan Foran? Topaz? Wow, this lecture is. I hope I can fill in a few holes. Okay, Tule Lake. Have you been to Tule Lake? Have you heard of it? Okay. 442nd Combat. Okay, now, then there's the 100th Battalion. These are the two organizations. It was Japanese only, and I'll go into more detail. My family was in San Francisco. This is my picture of my mom and dad when they got married. One of the things that's interesting about this picture is my dad, Japanese style, never smiled when they take pictures. They just had that stern look on their face, and my mother was barely smiling. Here we are in San Francisco, 1872 Bush Street, my mom and dad. I'm squeezed in between my mom and dad there, my grandmother, my two older brothers. 1872 Bush Street where we lived, and my two older brothers were in the Boy Scouts. Dad was a traveling salesman. He covered Montana, West, Colorado, and Utah. And then my mother was a seamstress. She did work, piecework. What that means is she got paid for everything that she did. And it's usually about 10 to 15 cents an hour. Okay, can you imagine that? Okay. Okay, here's a picture of me, and right here was one of the original flower childs of San Francisco. This is way back when, 1941 or so. Everything is going hunky-dory, okay? I'm going up and down the street in San Francisco on a scooter. And then it broke loose. 1941, December 7th is a memorable day. And you have to ask your grandparents, if you can, if they're available to ask, what did they experience on that day? And if you really listen carefully, they'll be able to tell you some of the stories that they had to go through, because it was not good. Everybody was involved with this war. Japanese planes. Now, here's an interesting point. A Jap is a Jap. It makes no difference whether he's an American citizen or not. He's still Japanese. The Japanese race is an enemy race, while many have become Americanized. The racial strains are undiluted. Sabotage and espionage will make problems as long as he is allowed in the area. The very fact that no sabotage has taken place today is a disturbing and confirming indication that such action will be taken. Now, General DeWitt made this statement. He went to Congress, he went to everybody. He wanted the Japanese, he viewed them as all Japanese being the enemy. The history between General DeWitt, he was ended up calling him, he was being called General Nitwit. Japs off the coast. Now, one thing I want to make sure we understand each other from this point on. The word Jap is very derogatory. It's like the N-word, and it's like any other word that's used in any language that derides minorities. So if the N-word or the J-word is still in your vocabulary, I wish you wouldn't use it anymore, because if it only tells you the level of cultural adeptness that you have. Now, this is the 9066, and I'm going to go through in more detail about it. All persons Japanese, both alien and non-alien, will be evacuated by noon, May 11th. Now, who does that involve? All of you. All of you as Japanese, you're going to be gone. No questions asked. If you're living in the area, you won't be able to change without permission. We'll provide services with respect to leasing, sales, storage, real estate, business, professional equipment. In other words, how many of you have a farm, live on a farm? Wow, interesting. All right. And so this is where, if you're a farmer, in May, the seeds are already planted, and you're waiting to fertilize it, water it, and everything else. If you're living in a city, you have to say, if I'm a doctor, dentist, lawyer, or whatever, I have to go. I have to go, no questions asked. So you gotta report to civil control station. Evacuees must carry upon their departure the following. You can only take what you can carry. Now, bedding, linen, toilet articles, sufficient knives, forks, spoon, plates, bowls, cup, essential personal effects. Now, how much do you take? How long do you know if you're going to be, how long will you be gone? And this is the question that nobody knows at this point in time. How many of you have pets? Too bad. Can't take it with you. We'll provide storages for these kinds of items, icebox, washing machine, things that you can't carry, you can't take with you, right? So, for you seniors, you're not going to graduate. For the freshmen, and sophomores and juniors, there's no school. You're going away. If you're in grade school, you just have to just leave and go. So what I'm trying to say to you is, what choices do I have? And so how many people in this room like choices? Okay, how many people do not like to be told what to do? Okay. And those of you with broken arms, I'd say, well, I know what your feelings are because I don't like to be told what to do. So what's happening is you're told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Now, how does that feel? Your choices have been taken away from you. All these choices that you had, it's like it's gone. And so then you say to yourself, what am I, a piece of something? You know what I'm talking about. I don't have to put words in your mouth. You already know what I'm going to say, but I can't say it in this room because I'm respectful for the facility. Okay. There's a new reality. Must obey orders. Must not openly complain. Okay? Must not embarrass. This is a Japanese way of doing it, where you don't want to lose face. You don't want to embarrass. You don't want to get into a situation where you obligate anybody else to do anything for you. So the Japanese words are shikata ga nai. Definition, so be it. This is the way it is. Gaman. Gaman is be stoic. And the last one is the most important one, is no moku. And what that means is no bitching. So put yourself in that situation now. What would you do if you were put under this circumstance? This is so important for you to understand, because you guys in this room are the future leaders of the world, and you're going to have to deal with these kinds of problems once you get out of school, because your leadership will guide the rest of the people. Okay, we had 127,000 Japanese in the United States. West Coast was 110,000. And Issei's were 40,000. Issei's are born in Japan. So the Nisei's were born in the U.S. So there's 70,000 American-born people that's going to camp. Now, if you're born in the United States, are you an American citizen? Yes. So this is where it's like, wait a minute, what's going on? I thought I was citizen in the United States, are you telling me what to do, when to do it, how to do it? The answer is yes. Here we are, lined up. And there's the sign that says this is what's going to happen. There's a store owner that has to go. He's got, okay, how many of your, I say parents because maybe you don't have stores yet. How many of your parents have businesses? Okay. If they were in this particular situation, what would they do with their inventory, accounts receivable, accounts payable? And that's the thing that you have to really understand in this stage of the game. 1 day to go. 1 day to go. In other words, shut the doors tomorrow and it's gone forever. How many of you own cars? Oh my goodness. Times have changed. So these used to be pretty good cars at that time in the they're late 1930 cars and so forth. So what do they do with the cars that they say you can't take with you? They gave it away to people who needed cars. And for the other people, they gave it to the used car dealers. What happened to your debt? What happened to your, what do they call when you loans? What's your loan image going to be after?
Credit score.
There we go. This is a sign that's in the Japanese community. This is an interesting one. This guy up here is saying, hey, waiting for the signal for using the dynamite or TNT, Washington, Oregon, California. All these Japanese depictions. And who would be the artist? Dr. Seuss. If you look up Dr. Seuss, and you look up Dr. Seuss, propaganda, World War II, he was a starving artist. I'll give him credit for that. But I don't buy his books for my kids because I have a certain sentiment about this guy. But this is the way it was. Propaganda was really thick at that time. Take what you can carry. Take what you can carry. There, he's got a rifle with him, ushering in the kids and everything, lined up down in Los Angeles. So we're told we're going to go someplace. Where? So we find out that we're going to go to Tanforan. It's a racetrack that was established in 1899, and they've been running this facility for 40 plus years. That means there are 40 racing seasons that occurred in this facility. So here's the barracks. And here's a picture of 50 of the back-to-back barracks that were horse stalled. Tom, I was not in this particular kind of situation, but it was close. Now, okay, you're told that you're going to sleep in this particular room. 40 seasons of horse racing, 40 seasons where the horse was not trained to stomp their hooves on the side of the wall to take them out to go to the bathroom. They did it while they were standing, right where they're standing. So, with all of what they did, and all of that soaking through the floor, all they did was wash the floor out, put linoleum on it, and that's it. So if you were assigned to the horse stall, like a lot of people were, that's the way it looked. And what they did was, the only thing that they had was a light bulb and cots. But I'll show you a picture of a cot in a few seconds. So then they had to take the scrap lumber of all of the barracks that were built, and then they made nightstands or whatever out of it so that then they'd have at least some furniture so that they can have some kind of order in their room. Okay, no problem. Here's your mattress. Take the hay and put it into the sack. How many of you have allergies? Too bad. It's just really too bad. Because this is what you slept on. If you couldn't sleep on it, then you'd have to sleep on the floor. This is the way the baggage was handed out. Now, when you put that many people in a camp, you have to feed them, and then you had to have toilets and everything else like that. We were in line three times a day to go eat. But the problem was, when you're given the dish that you have with the 6 compartments or whatever you were eating on, the first person who goes through it gets to clean the cleanest dishes because they get to rinse it in the cleanest water. But by the time 50 people go through the line, then what happens to the water? It gets pretty, yeah. So this is where I don't think they thought it through. Lots of lines. Lines for everything. Okay. Here's a guard shack, and here's the grandstand that you can see. Now, we were in Tanforan for a short time, but it was traumatic because for the people that lived in the horse stalls, they had it bad. They stunk when they came out because it was so saturated from the odor that was inside. So you could separate the people who were in the horse stalls versus the people who weren't. We were lucky we got into a barrack. And we were lucky we got cotton mattresses on army cots. And so, you know, when I think about what they went through, so let me ask you this question. If you were told that you're going to sleep in a horse stall, now, how many of you have horses? Okay. How close are you to your horse? Have you had, no? Just the big one? You ever sleep with them? Just think if you had to do that. And then the question is, how far do you have to go to the toilet at night? And there was only common places where you could go. They thought they could have business as usual, and they had churches going or whatever. So then we had to say, okay, we're going to go to another place on the planet. That place is out someplace. So we got on the train. We didn't know where we were going. Got loaded up. The shades were pulled down. There were guards at each end of the train. So it gives you a feeling of security to have the guards, soldiers at both ends of the, no. What they were wanting to do is make sure you don't get out of the train while we're going across Nevada and Utah. Can you imagine jumping off the train in the middle of the desert in Nevada? I can't. I know that I'd have it in this very short time. So here we are. A lot of you have been to Topaz, but all of the triangles here are where the camps are. And they put them in really unusual places, places where you wouldn't want to live. And so this is where the names of the camps, the city closest to the camps, and then when they started it, and the numbers of people. Tell me what cities that you're from. What city are you from?
Lehigh.
Lehigh. What's the population?
Oh, I have no idea.
Give me a guess.
A lot.
A lot.
A lot.
40,000, 50,000.
Yeah, probably.
Take the whole city and put them into the camp. Can you imagine that? 110,000 people put into camp, and you're part of it. Here we are in the desert. This is what they did was they took 1 square mile of the ground, and they what they call it, they took the guide and just scrapes all the ground, makes it even and everything. Now, here's an interesting one. This is the water tank. The water tank that was used in Topaz. How many of you have the understanding of history that there was a Lake Bonneville covering all of this, just about all of the state of Utah, right? And that lake covered quite a bit of land. Well, somebody decided to pull the plug on the lake, and then all the water was evaporated or it's gone into the ground. What do you think's left that's mixed in with the water? Saline. So, how many of you like to drink water out of a bottle? Okay, most of you do. I had a drink at the restaurant today, and it was a cold glass of water. It tasted so good. Now, when you drink water in Topaz, it's salty. When you take a shower, it's salty. Everything that gets cooked. So you tell me, is that another level of freedom that's taken away from you, that you don't even have fresh water? That it was clean, but it was salty. One idiot told me that he used to sneak up to the top of the water tower and go swimming. And I thought to myself, no, that can't be true. He says, very true. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to drink that water. There's the welcoming committee to Topaz City. Topaz was about, with 110,000, 8,000 population, it was probably about the 3rd biggest populated area in Utah at that time, 1942, 43. So here's a guy right here. He's got his Levi's. Why are his Levi's cuffed that high? Because Levi pants in those days were long. They didn't expect any short people at the beginning, that's why. So I told my daughter about this picture, and she says, Dad, that's the style right now, so don't fight it. So you got this guy with his suit and jacket and hat. And so we had a mixture of people with different kind of clothes. Here's the block that we lived in, block 27. The school that I went to was in block 41. Military in the upper right hand, and I think the hospital and maintenance and all of the supplies. The thing about the block, there were 12 barracks to a block. A through and E, A and F were 3 people. B and E were 5 and 6 people. C and D were 4. But if you had a big family greater than 6, then you got to split the rooms between the Now, here's another interesting thing. You're in the barrack, and they just built it. The ceiling is wide open. It's wide open. There's no sheetrock to cover the ceiling. So you say, wait a minute. If anybody's coughing in A, you could hear it in F. So if anybody was sick, you'll hear all that moaning and groaning, and you also heard the snoring that took place. But the interesting thing too is there are over 300 kids that were born in the camp. So what the couples decided was, heck with privacy, we got to do what we got to do. So they had 300 kids, so not bad. So the other thing is that when you make barracks out of green wood, once it starts drying, then there's spaces that come between the boards, right? And so then, when there's a dust storm, the dust comes right through the floor. And so then you have to sleep with towels on your face or t-shirts or whatever so that then you don't breathe in the dust. The other dynamic is most of the people in the camp were from California. And Californians don't like to wear parkas and boots and things like that. So what happened? They bring the clothes that they had, and our Utah winter's cold. Have you been through a pretty big snow season this year? And did you feel a little bit cold during the winter time? Yeah. So what happened is that then they had to buy the clothes after they got there. The people who didn't, everybody who worked made money. They were getting paid $16 a month. Anybody who was a dentist or a doctor, they got about $20 or $25 a month. Now, everything had to be ordered out of Sears and Roebuck or Montgomery Ward at that time. So do you think that you were a fashion goodie or what? You were wearing clothes that everybody else wore. No, there's no differentiation. Styles were all the same. So everybody appreciated that they got warm clothes. Okay, you can see that the guard towers right here, where the squares are in the corners in the middle. One guy decided that he wanted to get close to the fence. And so then what happened is that the guard said, "Don't come any closer, I'll shoot." He repeated it 3 times. Now, we don't know if this gentleman was probably in his 60s or 70s, couldn't understand English, or else he was hard of hearing. He stepped forward. He got shot. He's the one guy that got shot in the camp. And it was a really unfortunate situation. And it just goes to show you that there was no mercy in this point in time. Any questions so far? Oh, I've got you mesmerized, no? There's the barracks. Now, the barracks had tar paper on the top, tar paper on the side, no insulation in any of the barracks. And the thing that they had, and eventually they covered it with sheetrock. And so then we had pot-bellied stove. And smart-ass Yukio decided he should start the stove sometime. So I put the coal in, the kindling in, and the paper, and I lit it. Nobody told me that you should adjust the oxygen level that can get into the stove. So when I lit it, it took off. And it made everything red. And it made everything red up to the second pipe, the chimney. I was lucky I didn't burn the whole place down, but they didn't ask me to light the stove anymore. So if you were placed in this kind of environment, how would it feel? Told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, over and over again. Now, when Jay asked you to move closer together, a lot of people responded, and I thought, wow, that's good. And then, so this is where there's some degree of giving acceptance of the authority. But there were several people who did not like the fact that they were American citizens and they were put under incarceration, and therefore then they rejected it. And in the process, 3 of the guys, one went to jail for a year, one was reprimanded, had to be on probation or whatever. But the point I'm making is, there was rebellion, but there wasn't a lot of it. So this is where, if you have the need to be able to speak up, you have to do it in a way so that then you don't bring any harm to yourself or anybody else. Here's a lady artist that I wanted to show you because this is an important set of pictures. Okay, you go to the toilet. All the toilets are lined up one side by side. You can see there's no partition. And so then you say, wait a minute, where's the privacy? And so then this woman here was smart enough to get a cardboard partition, and she was able to sit behind it. Some people use bags, and they put bags over their heads so that then they didn't have to worry about anybody else. They just worried about themselves. And so then the downside of saying, I don't want to go in there where everybody else is, you hold it, next thing you know, you're going to get sick. Now, in the shower, there's no partition. They're shower heads side by side like this. And so then you say, oh, wait a minute, can I handle this? If I were in the camp and I was told to take a shower, how many of you would delay taking it just because you didn't want to be taking a shower with everybody else? So this is where privacy is a big concern. So many of you come from homes that have a toilet and a shower and a door. And if you have any brothers or sisters, you say, gotta shut the door and lock it so that they don't bother me while I'm in there. And until you're done, you're not gonna unlock the door so that they can come in. You don't have any of that. So if you want it to stay clean with the saltwater shower, this is the way you have to do it. So the artist did a nice job. And so this is where, again, your privacy is taken away. Your thought processes are, you better do as you're told or you're going to get in trouble. Here's the way the room was. This guy is an unusual picture here because he brought his clock with him. And I said earlier, you can only take what you can carry. Okay, this is it. There's the potbelly stove. Some people had time, so then they had gardens. When's the last time you washed your clothes with a washing board? Raise your hand. Not bad, not bad. 3 guys. 3 guys. Does anybody know what Instant Fells Naphtha soap is? There. You've got to be older.
Right here.
That's interesting. Now, when you go to the store, how many choices do you get of soap, detergent, and everything else? You had one choice, and maybe you got a bar of ivory soap, but that's it. And so then the whole point I'm making is everything got rationed out, okay? All of the cooks, dishwashers, my mother was a server, and there were any contractors that came in. Everybody volunteered to do what was necessary to have a smooth running organization. And my father volunteered to make coffee one morning. And so he had the big vat, big like that. Made the coffee, stirred it around. Then he got the white powder and poured it in. White powder. It was salt. My dad was never asked to make coffee. I don't know where this picture came from. Did we take all these clothes to take a picture like this in the camp? Probably. So you can see my father still has a stern look. My mother's smiling here. Grandma, she was just going with the flow. My grade school picture. Most of the teachers that we had were not, what do they call the word when you're accredited? They were not accredited. So if they had any kind of experience of liking children, they were asked to do this. So what I had to admit to myself after so many years. I have a learning disability, and I think it started right. I have something to blame. It's this situation here. There's my buddies. We had a lot of time to play. What's interesting is when you're in a camp and it's got a square mile fence around it, your parents don't worry because where could you go? It's not like today is, you gotta keep your eye on their kids or, they're gonna get abducted. Well, that wasn't, maybe they wanted us to get abducted. At Boy Scouts. So what they try to do is have business as usual, okay? At the gymnasium, at flag ceremony, at every football game, every game. We said the Pledge of Allegiance every morning before class started. Football games, they got I don't know where they got the uniforms and all of that, but they played the teams that were in the outskirts of Delta. We had teachers that came in high school, junior high, that were accredited. This Asian woman, I think she's Japanese, was the only woman that was living in that particular area. I don't know how she ended up there, but this is my brother. He was the editor-in-chief of the yearbook. That's the staff. My sister-in-law is the second from the right on the top row. Graduation, cap and gown, in the camp, yearbooks. If you go to Delta, if you go to the museum, you'll see a copy of the yearbook because Jane, who is the director of the museum, her dad was had a business, printing business, and printed the yearbook, so she has a copy of it. Now, this is one of the ironies that I wanted to bring up the most. Everybody got a questionnaire. Are you willing to serve in the armed forces of the United States on combat duty wherever ordered? Will you swear unqualified allegiance to the United States of America and faithfully defend the United States from any or all attack by foreign, domestic, and forswear any form of allegiance or obedience to the Japanese emperor as any other foreign government power? Now, remember, you're born in the States. You're Japanese American, and you're given this to answer. Now, your constitutional right has been violated based on the fact that you got incarcerated. So how would you answer that question if you were in camp? Because sometime in your lifetime, you're going to be asked this kind of a question to say, where is your loyalty to the United States? And so then the guys and the women had to answer this, okay? So what happened? You got guys to sign up. They got husbands to sign up. And if you didn't sign up, you got drafted. My brother went to Ypsilanti, Michigan on a scholarship. And within a semester, he got his draft call. See, right now, you don't have a draft. All the people that are serving in the Army or services are all volunteer. So you don't even have to worry about getting drafted, at least today. So this is what happened. So whenever you go to war, there are killed in action, wounded in action, missing in action, total, and then the people that served from Topaz, 20,000. So a lot of the guys came from Hawaii too. And the Hawaiian Japanese guys didn't particularly like the stateside Japanese guys because they thought all the Japanese people in the stateside were rich and whatever else, until they found out that they were in the camp. And once they found out they were in the camp, then the Hawaiian guys embraced all of the guys because they were in the same service. Now, if you think about the 442nd, the 101st, all of them were all Japanese. Why? What the American officers in charge were worried about was that the American soldiers would get shot in the back by these Japanese Americans that were enlisted in the army or drafted in the army. Not happen, ever, okay? So that's why by the time I got in the service, they let me go in. I didn't happen to be in an organization that had all Japanese. Now, in the camp, you had funerals for soldiers that served and got killed, and they were having the service inside the camp. So can you imagine that? And so then you have Gold Star mothers and fathers inside the camp, and they were still incarcerated. Now you have a gentleman with a hat on. He probably served in the First World War, okay? So this is the tragedy of what happened. So by the time the guys were going into service, they said, why are we holding these guys in the camp? It doesn't make sense. And so then they said, well, if that's the case, let's disband the whole thing and just let them go. And so what happened? They were told, you're free to go, but the question is where? Because you got fired from your job because you were Japanese. You got kicked out of the housing because you were Japanese. And then if you're the first to go back to where you came from, thanks for coming, you guys. And so then what happens is, if you're the first to go, they want to know, hey, how did it go when you went back home? And so some farmers were lucky. They sold their farm to their neighbor, who's a very close friend. They sold it to him for $1. So the farmer had to do the harvest, and he made all the profits from it. But when the farmer came back, he acknowledged that, I'll sell you the farm back for $1. So that's how some farmers did. But some farmers were totally abused, and they were taken advantage of. So can we leave in one day? Set the quota. You either sign up, or we'll sign you up, and or you'll be packed up and you'll be escorted to the train. So we not only get escorted to the train to go to camp, now we're getting escorted out to get out of the camp. So that's really interesting. So here we are in Ogden, Utah. My dad was able to find a place on Pingree in 29th. And my brother's still in his uniform. Family picture. My grade school picture. I'm the only Japanese person in there. So apology was written to the people who went to the camp. They were $20,000 set aside. But you were only given the money if you were still alive. Okay, so a lot of people died in the meantime. There's a plaque that's in Topaz. What did I learn? The Constitution was put aside. U.S. citizens excluded from protection. During the Vietnam War, authorities wanted to round up all the protesters. During the Gulf War, they thought that the rounding up of all the Middle East people in the U.S. Now, here's a funny question that I was thinking about this morning, because there's talk about going to war with China, right? Can you imagine rounding up all the Chinese people in the United States? Because they thought about rounding up all the Germans during the Second World War and the Italians. They said, no, there's just too many. There are over 1 million Germans and hundreds of thousands of Italians, so they couldn't do that. So they picked on the Japanese, and this is what happened. There's a camp in Livermore that's ready to go anytime. Here's my brothers. Now, because I designed this whole thing with my daughter and son-in-law, I was able to pick the biggest picture for myself. My oldest brother was assigned to go to Japan. He read all the letters that were coming in and out of Japan. My brother signed up. He was part of the Marines that went up to the Yalu River when MacArthur was saying that we're going to go all the way up to the Yalu River and we'll even go into China. Big mistake. Another irony of the war. My brother came back. Well, my brother was captured. He was a prisoner of war for 6 months. He came back, I think the way I would put it, he had PTSD, so he had a hair trigger for his emotions. But we got together. Now, you ask yourself, why would these three guys sign up for the service after they were treated the way they were treated in the United States? And for me, personally speaking, the United States is the best country in the world. You can't beat what we have here. And so then if you think, well, I'll just go someplace else, you cannot replace what you have here in the United States at all. So that's why I say to myself, I know there are blemishes in the history of the United States and being history majors and all. You got the Indian massacres, you got the Africans that were brought over here, but you also have the Irish, Italians, and various other Mexicans that were put under duress conditions. And so there are blemishes. They will continue to have blemishes because of political reasons, and we're going through it right now. So this is where you, as future leaders of America, have to really think about, where do I stand? Do I stand with justice, or do I stand with a person's personality? And that's where you have to think, okay? So we went over, now this one thing that I want to share with you is concentration versus concentration. There's no doubt in my mind, what we went through as Japanese come nowhere close to what happened in a concentration camp in Germany. Nothing compares to that. So whenever I speak about concentration, I use the lowercase c for concentration that I went through, uppercase for, in fact, all capitals for what happened in Germany. So this is where, you know, I just want you to know where I'm coming from. Tanforan Delta Topaz. If you ever get a chance to go to Topaz, please do so. Because what I said today will amplify what feelings that you may have about what you experienced in the camp, what I experienced in the camp. Although it's all desert right now, and if you go to the museum, you'll see some pictures that I didn't show today, and you'll have a deeper appreciation as historians of Utah, so that then you could pass it on. Because whether you only read one paragraph of Utah history with the Japanese, or you read a page, I hope I fulfilled some degree of filling in the holes for you, so that then it entices you to learn a little bit more, and that would be great. So this is my oldest son. He's sitting in the back here. My next son, my daughter, and my wife. This is my rainbow-colored family. So I really appreciate your patience. Now I'm waving the magic wand to bring you back to who you were before we started. And I appreciate your attention, and if there's any questions, let's see if I can handle it, okay? Without getting too much.
So I'd like to know from your experience, how or why do you see America as the best country?
It's not hard for me to express myself, because I've had the privilege of getting through a lot of the privileges that I've been given. Number one, freedom to choose. and I'll use the term that you're familiar with. I do have free agency. And that's important to me, that I have the ability to do what I want to do within limits, of course. But where else can you live where you can do what you're doing right now? You get to express yourself however way you want to express yourself, within limits, of course. If you're in the church, you have limits. If you're in the United States, if you say something derogatory, it's okay, but then on the other hand, if you're advocating violence, that's out. So in a way, the thing we have to be careful about is how we want our freedom to be. There are some people here in the United States that have chosen freedom in their own way, but then on the other hand, they're breaking laws at the same time, and that's not right. So this is where you have to, you as adults, mature adults, you as potential lawyers, doctors, planners, whatever you're going to be, you have choices in the future, and that's the way I see it. And if you don't see it the way I see it, we'll talk about it. Anybody else?
So, when you came back to Utah and that's where you settled, did you feel like, or did you actually experience like the people around you, like in school and stuff, kind of sort of labeling you with that identity?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're Japanese, you were put in that, you were in a camp, like, what was that like to be?
Well, coming back, there's sections of where things happen. When I was at school, I wasn't jacked. When I was on the football team, I wasn't jacked. But when I was out in the streets and whatever, point their finger at you and say, jacked. And then you'd say, well, let's see, is it worth fighting over? I used to get in a lot of fist fights. And so then I had to learn that fighting is not going to be the issue. I just need, what I need to do is just be able to say, you know what? You are culturally deprived, you got the problem, not me. So this is the way I work with it now. So I said, I changed the one back to your being back to who you were. I hope today I fulfilled some of your inquiry, inquisitiveness of, I hope you could say when you walk out, I didn't know that, but now I know a little bit more. That's all we're here to do, is learn a little bit more. And I'd have to be, let me just say one little thing and then I'll let you go. If it wasn't for the LDS Church and my friend that took me in and his family that took me in, I had never experienced love like I experienced with him and his family. And that, because in the Japanese culture, love is not expressed the way it's expressed in the LDS membership family. So what I was thinking today is I thought to myself, yes, I have free agency. Yes, I get to choose. And I was able to choose between Point of the Mountain and Weber State and Utah State. And if I didn't choose it that way, I wouldn't be here today. So for all of you who have been on missions, for all of you who are going to go on missions, or for all of you who are thinking about it, the words that you use to express your love to whoever the door you're knocking on, even though they slam the door in your face, and I've experienced, the missionaries tell me as they come to my house, they say, yeah, I've had a few doors slammed in my face. That's fine. But there are some people that may not acknowledge what you said, but they experience how you said it, and they appreciate it. So this is where, I'm telling you, don't give up. Because a lot of the missionaries is coming back home. They lived a very enriched life of being on the mission and giving to as many people as they can, even though you have to keep records, Okay, even though you have to keep all the administrative stuff to be on the mission, doesn't matter. It's what you do to express your love. Because there's not a lot of people on earth right now that express their love to other people. So you're expressing your love to them really does a lot of good. So thank you very much, everybody.